Hello, welcome to the UX Playbook, episode 4. Today I'm joined by Matthieu Mingasson, Head of Design Transformation at Code and Theory, and today we're going to be discussing how can UX designers drive transformation for brands and organizations. Matthieu, over to you for a quick intro.
Hey, hi Ryan, thanks for having me. Yes, design transformation, we're going to talk about that today. So I'm Matthieu Mingasson, I'm Head of Design Transformation at Code and Theory. I'm based in New York, but I work with global clients. So in the remote world we're living now, it's like the business has been changing. So I'm managing large accounts, driving design transformation, which are complex engagements, requires a lot of different disciplines. So that's what I'm doing. Perfect. At Code and Theory.
And so why are we discussing this? What is it about design transformation in particular that's really exciting you and getting you interested in this particular topic at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, design transformation is, I would say digital transformation, right, has been around for a while. People are talking about transformation in all different forms. And you can hear like digital transformation or business transformation a lot. And I think why we are discussing this today is because everyone wants to find a way to make it successful, I think, there's a lot of studies to show, like from McKinsey and from BCG and so on, that shows that about 2/3, 70% of the digital transformation effort do not succeed or do not bring the outcome that were initially expected. Yeah. And so the question, like, why is that? What's happening, right? So from a business standpoint, transformation is crucial, and we're going to talk about that today and why it's crucial. From a design standpoint, I do think design has a big role to play in actually making those efforts successful. And I call it design transformation, why we call it design transformation at Code and Theory versus digital or business, because design has the power of manifestation. Right? Design can create and visualize things that do not exist yet. That's the power of design. So you can visualize what could be, what if this, what if that. And design transformation has, it has the ability to manifest and align people around a vision and make it happen. So I'm very excited about this subject, obviously. There's a lot happening in the field at the moment, and I guess
I've been doing a bit of research on it. It looks like design transformation's been around for a little bit of time. It's not necessarily a new thing. It's just that not lots of people talk about it or practice it because digital transformation has been such a big thing in the digital world. But from speaking with you and understanding from your side of things, it's more about using design practices and how you go about a design process to start implementing change within an organization, which can have those long-lasting effects and actually potentially better results.
Exactly. And when we say design today, we mean design with a big D, meaning that all different aspects of design, including UX design, which is a specific aspect of it. But when I refer to design, I mean like basically the practice of solving problems in the most effective and elegant way, right? Something like that. And all form of design needs to be involved in the transformation effort. There's not one way. There's not one recipe for making those transformations successful. There's many different ways, and each organization, each company has a different set of problems. And so to make this successful, the first thing you need to be is being, as a designer, as you should be, being flexible, like understanding the context and the circumstance is the first thing you need to have.
I think the main thing as well is starting to think about the role of a designer as being broader in terms of how it can help solve business problems, rather than just being siloed into one particular area, actually using the same principles and using the same methodologies that you would do in design, you can go and solve much bigger, more complex problems. And that's what I found was really interesting about using design to transform an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like design in general and UX design in particular have been evolving over time. Like we've seen how the practice of UX design, let's say in the last 15 years, right? How UX design has been evolving. And there's a lot of meetings and conferences about the practice of UX design, the difference between XD and UX and visual design, all of that, right? I think we, as designers, we have to be extremely careful about not to corner ourselves. And something I've noticed in the UX community is that UX designers are in love with UX design, right? They love geeking around with it. They love like the practice, the crafting, all of that, the deliverables, the mapping, the journeys, and all of the above. And we love that as designers, but those are just tactics. They're just a toolkit, and the toolkit has to evolve, and the toolkit has to match clients' expectation. So one big pitfall I would call out for designers is your practice is, your toolkit you bring in the meeting, but that's not the goal. The goal is to make the meeting successful, making the workshop successful. And to do that, you need to understand the client context. What is the context? So immediately putting your consulting or business hat is critical. And then you can leverage your design tools, your toolkits, your methodology, all of that. But clients don't need a UX class. They don't need a course in UX in order for you to do UX. See what I mean? And that's one of the behavior I've noticed in UX designers, that they want to explain UX.
Educate, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not necessary. You can practice UX with clients without having them to be expert in UX. That's our job.
A lot of it is just asking questions, isn't it? Asking the right questions at the right time and finding the journey through to then you got the beginning, what the problem is, the end, what the solution is, and then it's just navigating that path and how you do that. And like you said, there's no one fixed way, but it's how you do that. And that could be a business problem. It could be a digital problem. But yeah, it's a really interesting field. So I guess just to give us a quick summary then of what we'll be discussing today in this episode, if you can just summarize for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we have started already, right? Yeah. We in it, but I would say, what is like, how can we uncover and define transformation and design transformation specifically, right? And what to look for and watch out as designers? What are the problems that we are finding ourselves in the situation, and what is the practice of doing that? I think those are the two big topics, like how to drive this successfully and what is the role and the problem potentially for designers in this field.
So I guess in terms of what is the context of transformation as designers, like transformation is such a big word, you could be transforming, and actually a lot of companies, I feel they've been through transformation or they're going through transformation, especially in the US. These companies are massive, huge of organizations, but like from what is the context of transformation for a designer, and how can you start uncovering and start working through some of these problems?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, what is really transformation about, right? And that's something I've been thinking of for a while. And I with my team, we came up with like a definition, and that definition is subject to change. But as of now, we believe that design transformation is the practice of generating future value for customers and businesses by increasing organization's ability to identify problems, to experiment with solutions, and to operate change. So there's a lot of keywords in that definition. The first keyword is really like generating future value. Like what the transformation is about. First, forecasting. Everyone wants to predict the future, right? That would be so powerful to be able to know what the future entails, right? In a world where change is a norm now, and so like being able to see what's coming is part of the power of design and creativity, right? It's visualizing what the potential of a business can be, like what is the future value that a business can bring. The other keyword is increasing organization ability to identify problems. So here, the keyword is ability. Transformation never stops. Transformation never ends. It's not something that you fix and you're done with it. It's actually part of the business now. Like transformation needs to be seen as an intrinsic part of the practice of the business. So being always aware of the potential for business, the opportunities, the challenge, the problems, the evolution of the market, etc., is the practice. That's it. That's the business. And so design come in support of that. Design come in support of identifying problems. Let's start with that. Like a lot of companies, claim about being customer centric or customer centered or user centered, but you observe that having not many of them have a strong and solid and deep research practice. Some do, some don't, right? So starting with that, this is where design can change things. And then I would say it's great to know the future, but it's even better to be able to know how to get there, right? When you foresee, when you have a vision, when you innovate, when you create a North Star for yourself, for your company, being able to know what is the road to there, what is the road to that horizon is actually even more valuable. And that's also what transformation is about. The road mapping, the deconstructing of the vision into tangible.
That's it, isn't it? It's about big picture, but then the roadmap to get there. So what toolkit would you generally be using? Is this more about, starting to work with the right types of people within the organization, starting to understand? Because in a massive, in a huge corporation, the North Star and the people you might need access to might be miles away. You might have very limited access to them. But then you can start working small, can't you? You can start working small and start building up to then start really understanding how you can have a bigger impact through design transformation.
Yeah. So I would say, the first thing that everyone in the design business has to get better at, because we're never good enough, it's really understanding the context of the business you are addressing, and as fast as you can. So there's different contexts. Some designers works in agencies, some designers works in-house, but anyhow, like understanding the context, understanding the circumstances of the business and the nuances and all the details is the key. Like you can't be relevant in the solution you're going to uncover if you don't deeply understand how things work from a business standpoint. So this is where designers needs to be have their consulting hat and their business analysis hat, where to really understand, the landscape on which they can operate, right? That's the first thing. And you can, you have to fall in love with a problem before you fall in love with a solution. That's rule number one. And by falling in love, I really mean it, meaning true empathy for the problem for the customer, problem for the business, problem for whatever is in between. When you deeply empathize with it, actually the solution comes naturally out of it. There's a point where you don't even need to look for the solution. It comes out of your understanding of the problem naturally, right? And so, so that's really the first thing. That's the consulting hat. And then transformation is, as you said, it's a journey, right? It's a complex journey, and it's a moving target. And that's hard because as designers, we are trained to deliver a thing, like a prototype, a deliverable, a map, whatever. And so at some point in transformation journey, you always have to change. Your target is going to move necessarily. By definition, I would say almost, right? Yeah. It's actually not a bad sign when your target is moving as you walk, because it means that you already have uncovered some problems and your understanding of the context has evolved. And so if it's true for you and your team and your clients, that's actually a good sign that you're ready to move even further than previously expected or planned.
So what other problems do you typically come up against when you're working through transformation in design? And have you got any strategies that we can help overcome these?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different problems, right? When you and I just want to preface the fact that those problems are actually, they are opportunities for, this is what transformation is about. Like there's like looking at inside organization and how can they impact the outside, the customer experience is the same job, right? You can't be impactful for the customers if your organization, if your engine is not, functional. And so in transformation, you look at both. You look at how the organization behave so it can provide the best customer experience possible, right? It's the same story, it's the same journey. And so a lot of, looking at large organization, obviously the first common problem is excessive silo, right?
Yes.
Large silos, separation between disciplines, between departments, between business units. And design is by nature transversal, cross-discipline. The only way to really understand the problem is to bring all the different facets together, all different perspectives, so you get the full picture, right? So as a designer, this is where you become a facilitator, right? You create the conversation, you create alignment. The solution doesn't have to come from the designer. The designer there almost plays a back role where, like, having people discussing and uncovering by themselves the difference of perspective, the difference of vision, of views is actually very valuable. And so that's the first thing you have to do when you encounter a very complex organization. Sometimes, like, also often I see visions are in organizations are very top down. They are very abstract. They are very business driven, and they lack tangibility. They lack manifestation. And this is where design is, bring the power of creation. Like, you can actually visualize what does it mean to change a business model, to pursue a different goal, and you can literally imagine what could be a new outcome for the organization. So the vision is also about alignment, right? If you don't have alignment, you don't have a vision, right? And if you don't have a vision, you don't really have alignment either. So a lot of organizations, are very strategically driven. They think they have alignment, they think they have a strategy, but they lack tangibility. And so that's our job to do that.
Yeah.
One thing I would call out again is about, the integration of design into large organization. It doesn't come necessarily naturally, like, unless the company you're working with is, I would say, natural in design or customer experience, which is the case for the Googles of the world, things like that. We have built a culture of design internally, but those are exceptions. Right? I work with large organizations, and design is new for most of them, and so the risk is commoditization of design. Like, design is there to create outputs, to create features, to push user stories. And yes, that's part of the job, but that's not transformative job. That's about fixing today. Necessary, needs to be done, but fixing today. And you can get pretty deep in the rabbit hole when you do that. So you can, as a designer, you always have to jump out of the hole and look at the big picture, bring both the big picture and the perspective, the ground level and the
that's a massive challenge, though, isn't it? Because often your job is to try and produce something for now, isn't it, as a designer? So therefore, trying to find the time and to try and start making these inroads. Sometimes you're so focused on the delivery and the output of what you've got to do now, and actually there's never enough hours in the day anyway to get what you need to get done. So sometimes it can be, that's the challenge for a designer. If they're sitting here thinking, I want to start making these inroads, it's just about how they can find that time. Do you think they need to be working in an organization that are open to being transformed? Or do you think, actually, if you're a designer or a consultant sitting on the outside and you're asking the right questions and you're bringing the right people to the table, you can start driving the transformation without necessarily people being as aware?
Yeah, you can. I think there's not one way to do it.
No.
Each organization proposes a different context, a different circumstances, and the role of designers is to understand the context in which we operate, right? And so I would say anything is possible always, right? But some organizations are more or less ready to incorporate, to see design as a transformation factor, right?
Yeah.
So if you're, let's talk about a situation where, the organization is new to the design practice. I think your role as a designer is to talk business.
Yeah.
You have to talk business to be heard. And so meaning that you have to bring a strategic consideration, to bring the research and the data in the conversation. That's what you need to do, and avoid jumping on features and solution and quick wins. Like, don't be afraid of the problems. Like, don't be afraid of the hard conversation. Bring it to the table, but bring it with proof and data and research, insights. Right? This is, business-driven organizations they have the ear for that. They understand when a point is proven by data, they get it, and this is how you can make the conversation.
You were saying
forward.
before as well, in terms of breaking down those silos, similar approach, because silos are there in many organizations, but you can start breaking those down by that data-driven approach as well, can't you? By showing evidence of something to start proving why, if these people can collaborate, it's going to be much better for the organization as a whole.
Yeah, and more we do that early on. Before we used to, I think, like most agencies or even like internal teams have the tendency to plan everything before designing, right? You research, you define, you create the blueprint, you gather, you start maybe you start wireframing or mapping everything, right? So you create deliverables that are documentation, basically, right? And those are very valuable, but I see now the value of bringing design in a much more rapid way, like much more early on in the process, at early stage, to manifest what the conversation is about. What do we mean by certain type of strategies or potential outcomes? And that's mindset around that, the mindset of innovation and exploration and discovery versus planification and building.
Yeah.
And you need both, right? You need both. But our job as designers, like, what do you need when? Like, what is the right approach for this group of people? Maybe we need to jump into proof of concept and create something really quick in a week, so we can actually help moving the conversation forward, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes you need to be very thorough and to, deconstruct all the problem and to talk about features. And in many cases, it's both at the same time. You usually need to do both, to be gestural about design, meaning create like a quick visualization of what could be, but also being very, very thorough and organized about how it can be done.
Yeah.
Also,
I think one of our earlier conversations as well, we were talking about how you're not going to be able to solve some of these problems very quickly. Design transformation is not something that's going to suddenly change within a week, a month, a year. Some companies aren't ready for them. Their design mindset isn't there. They're not thinking in this way. And I think a lot of the problem at the moment is design can be quite short-sighted. You're trying to solve something now. You're trying to get something done quickly, whereas actually a lot of, I guess, what we're talking about can take a long time. I think you're saying some of the industries you work in, it might be like pharmaceuticals. You can't learn the business side of pharmaceuticals overnight. It's going to take you a little bit of time to really immerse yourself and understand the pain points and the pressure points and how those companies think, to then start thinking about how you can transform. So I think it's about giving it time, isn't it? And understanding you can get quick wins in this, but actually investing time will help in terms of that longer term view.
Yeah. So those are programs, right? That's how I talk about it, like transformational programs, meaning that they take several years and they are multi-layered, right? So there is like layers about how people work together, layers about establishing your vision and aligning executive stakeholders, a layer about research and gathering data, another layer about like building a roadmap, another layer about actually designing what exists today and fix it. And all of those are interconnected. So that's what the transformation program is about. It's definitely not a set of slides for sure. It's not a deck that you deliver and this is it. That's how you're going to run it. No, you have to walk the walk. And transformation is long because transformation never ends.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the business. Like, once again, I think like we used to think as transformation as almost like a therapy, right? It's like a business therapy where, okay, my business might not be broken today, but like I'm worried about the future. Okay, let's fix it. That's, that doesn't work. Like what works is like, it's about gymnastics. Like how can we make the business flexible enough so it can actually be ready for anything? Yeah. I think that's the thing. Like if I want to like summarize transformation is like the ability to be ready for anything. Yeah. And so that means that it's not about the deliverable. It's not about specific outcome. You don't know what the future is going to be. No one knows. Like it's impossible. So you cannot predict the future. But what you can do is to be ready for whatever will come, right? And so flexibility in the organization, preparedness of the team, mindset, culture, toolkit, practice, all of that, needs to be put in place where so the organization is ready when there is a massive change happening, they can cope with it, like COVID or wars, the organization can resist and keep, pursuing great business.
So how can you practice transformation as a designer? What are the practical things you can do if you're working in a consultancy or maybe you're working in-house, and you've got a lot more insight into that one particular business?
Yeah, so it takes a team, right? It takes a team to transform things. Yeah. As an individual, it depends where you are, in your career, in your team, what's your position. But I think it's something like every designer can think of, even like the most junior ones. I have conversation with junior designers who are strategists, who are very excited about transformation, design transformation, and they see, like it's the great practice. And what I tell them is that don't get too stuck in your today's practice. Like, yes, evolve it, work on it, but know that things will change for sure. Yeah. And don't corner yourself. As I said, like the transformation business is about being ready for anything. That is true at the individual level too. Like constantly challenge your practice, constantly challenge what you believe is true. Read stuff, like change your ideas, like create something new you never done before. That's really where you're going to get better. Like that because the landscape is moving. So that's the nature. Well,
the understand business and business language and business talk, and how people within, say, senior management will make decisions, like become data-led, data-driven, utilize similar terminology, but actually learn about the business. And I think that's where, as a designer, it can be quite easy to, okay, I know Figma, I can mock up and I can design great experiences, but actually it's that crossover between being a great designer but then understanding how to solve business problems and business language, investing a little bit of time in basically reading business books or reading whatever it might be will massively help understand the industry you're working in, really understand it, not just how to necessarily design, but understand pressure points and the pain points and the complexities, because these are all the things that will help you, I guess, in that journey towards transformation and driving change.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something, it's true for all designers, but specifically when you work inside an agency where your job is actually to being able to understand your client's business very quickly.
Yeah.
And so people are trained in agencies specifically are trained to be very fast at learning complex businesses. I mean, sometimes like, the subject can be very, very complex. I think one of the most complex subjects I ever had to learn in 2 weeks was like clinical trials business is insanely complex. And I had to understand it with all the acronyms that comes with it in a couple of weeks, because the time you spend learning, the client it's not valuable for the client. It's valuable for you. You learn their business. They know their business, so you have to learn very quickly. And that's true for every single category you work on. So, but that's what people in agencies are trained for, be able to jump from a category to a category and learn very quickly.
What's the secret?
But when you work in house, it's also true. Like you have to understand all the different facets of the business. So let's say you work in a very large financial organization, financial firm. There is more than one job in that firm, right? So you have to understand like all the different disciplines between financial strategy, investment manager, portfolio manager, SMS, all of that. Like how does that work? And get to the core of it. Like don't stay superficial. Really understand what they're doing. That's the only way you actually can make great design and solution, by really deeply understanding what's going on.
It's just asking questions, isn't it? Asking the right questions, talking to enough people, facilitating workshops, getting people around the business talking together to be able to really deeply understand what it is they do, to be able to then design more effective solutions for the business you're working in.
Yeah, and people, they give time to designers, like business owners. Either you are a designer in an agency or a designer in an organization. When you interview people, they give you time.
Yeah.
And so the way you conduct interviews, the way you conduct research, you have to be aware of that. People are making time for you, and so being prepared, doing your homework before jumping into any interview is like minimal. Things to do, like it's common courtesy, I would say. Yeah. And so understanding the business, reading ahead of time, and come with like deep question that really you can't solve by yourself. So solve everything by yourself, everything you can, do it by yourself, and then come with questions in an interview where you really need help. Yeah. That's where it becomes valuable, because what's happening in this situation is the business owners will actually face also themselves contradiction in the way the business is defined, or reveal gaps, reveal pain points immediately, right? Yeah. If you go deep enough, they will talk about those problems very quickly in the conversation. So this is where, as an example here, there's a blend between research strategy and designing solutions, because by conducting research and conversation with stakeholders in the right way, you uncover already problems. You uncover potential opportunities.
I think as well, like I said, it's just having the data and the insight to back up what you think, what might be the best solution, but then actually having some of that data just to underpin the decisions that you can then make will make your life so much easier in terms of convincing stakeholders that it's the right move to do.
Data is an important point. I think for sure, you need to gather all the data, you need to gather all the insight. However, design is about a leap of faith, right? It's always an interpretation. Like there's no such things as direct translation between data and research and design. It doesn't exist. Like you have, a designer is a creator. A strategist is also a creator. So there is a choice. There is a business choice on how to interpret and work with the data and research. Also, data and research never ends, right? So that's another thing that needs to, it's a practice. It's not a deliverable. And so, but like it's a leap of faith. So in a way, you can gather all the data you want, you're going to take risk. You should take risks. And, otherwise you are being probably too conservative about the solution you're coming with, right? So pushing the business while reading the data and reading insights is the job of the designer.
It's just about doing the thing with the most data informed decision, so utilizing the data, still taking chances, but utilizing the data to be able to support what the decisions you're making, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But fail and then fail fast so you can go again.
Yeah. And fail fast. Yeah. It's something people talk about, but fail fast requires, it's not always obvious for everyone. Not everyone is allowed to fail fast, and many organizations don't have the mindset or the culture. So to fail fast, you need to fail in a safe environment, right? Yes. You need to be able to work and operate in an environment that tells you it's okay, you can fail. Please fail fast, but you can fail, right? But it's a mindset, right? It's a cultural thing. So creating a safe environment, even as a designer, when you create a workshop and you encourage people to come up with problems and ideas, you have to create that context of safety and say, and tell people no harm will be done. That's the place to express their concern and pain points.
Well, it's been great talking and great learning about, I guess, what you do on a day-to-day basis, driving transformation through design. Really appreciate your time today.
It's a pleasure.
Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to talk about those things.
Amazing. Thanks, Matthieu. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, Ryan.